Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show talking about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Doom Patrol, a great episode. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, we have, Cliff kind of snapping back to things. So it's like, hey, the rat's no longer in his head, which I'm so curious. Obviously, we saw the rat scurry off. It kind of imploded everything with the Doom Patrol, but it's like, where does he go from, where does the Admiral go from here, So I'm curious if we're going to see him later on. I kind of get the feeling like his revenge might not be done. Maybe it is. We'll see. But it also brought up something I completely misinterpreted. That whole painting situation, I completely saw that different than everyone else did. Because apparently it's like, oh, that's Cyborg having killed everyone around him. I looked at it as like, oh, Cyborg's the only one still alive holding someone. I thought it was his dad, but maybe it's Niles. Interesting enough, just side bit of information I just remembered. The actor who plays Silas, Vic's dad, he played Martian Manhunter, John Jones, in Smallville. It just clicked in my head the other day because I'd completely forgotten about that to, start thinking about some other stuff just because of, watching Supergirl and everything made me think of Smallville in certain regards. So, but nevertheless, that was just something that was in the back of my mind. But I completely interpret that as like, oh, everyone's around him's dead and he's the only one to survive. That's how I saw that. I didn't see that as like oh no, he kills everyone. Not unless that's everyone's misinterpretation of that. It's going to be interesting to see who's wrong. Was it my misinterpretation? Was it the team's misinterpretation? Either way, we have Cliff and Rita dealing with the latest personality to pop up and the most dangerous one, Karen. Side note, have they referenced Karen before? I guess this is like the first time. I think I'm confusing her with that other personality that like popped up before. They were like, yeah, you really don't want her to pop up. I forgot who it was. Because I kept thinking in my head, I'm thinking the name is Karen, but I think it was a different personality that popped up earlier in the season. They were like, yeah, you really don't want her to pop up because she's like from the super depths of the underground and stuff like that. But nevertheless, Karen, I love Karen's whole situation. Is basically she's so stuck in love, and basically her entire life is like a 90s rom-com to the point, especially that moment she had with Doug and everything. She's in the rain and she's just like, oh, and she's falling in the mud. He's like, are you okay? And just like that moment between them, I'm like, I love this. It's so like, it is such a cheesy rom-com thing. It's raining and stuff like that. She's like, I guess I'm not that good of an umbrella. I'm like, oh my God. Which is interesting considering obviously we see Jane, like a lot of her personalities don't seem like the lovey-dovey type. So it's really interesting to see it, I mean, to be fair, I guess you can make the argument they're all kind of like separate parts of K that, get manifested in these more, extreme versions of themselves. But nevertheless, her whole situation is kind of interesting and like obviously Rita's kind of like her best friend and stuff like that. It's interesting how she treats Cliff because it's like, oh, Jane's told me so much about you. She's like, what has she told you? I guess that was her just trying to be nice and stuff like that, but it's just kind of, well, she says stuff later on that kind of makes it seem like she does know, but I guess it was also like she didn't want to tell Cliff all the kind of terrible things Jane might have said, especially recently about him and stuff like that. But it was kind of interesting because obviously it's like, oh, me and you, Rita, were besties and stuff like that. And obviously, like, this is an on and off situation. I guess Rita never knew the whole full extent of what Karen's whole situation is because it took Hammerhead coming in to be like, oh, her love spell. Because, like, Hammerhead really didn't appreciate it. I like, if he puts his penis anywhere near my bush, if I get fucked, you get fucked. That was... And that's the thing, it's Hammerhead. You don't know exactly what the hell that threat means. I mean, you can assume, but you don't know. That could just be her being like, I'm going to rip you to pieces type of situation. But who knows with Hammerhead. But it's so interesting because I guess in all this time, Rita just never really knew. I mean, it seems like Karen doesn't come out that often, but often enough to Rita be like, oh, it's Karen that's in control, to kind of recognize the signs and stuff like that. Apparently she comes out when Jane's really, really in a bad place. And I guess, yeah, her and Cliff are in a rocky place, but I think Cliff saying what he said in last episode really kind of sent her off the deep end, like, especially because no matter how complicated things are between her and Cliff, she still likes Cliff on some level and she still cares about him, and I think that's what made that hurt even more, him saying what he said, So there's that. But like the whole twisted thing of like his family's had it up to there because Karen proposes to Doug and his family's like, yo, it's either her or... It's so interesting because like when it was all said and done, his family was kind of like, the last time things broke up between you guys, you didn't get out of bed for 6 months. And that's what I'm curious about. We didn't dive into that, but is it because like her spell has a certain limit, and as long as that, like, does it have like a 6-month limit? is it a continuous spell until someone breaks it, or the fact of the matter is it kind of like withdrawal, where she's kind of like a drug, and after a while you start feeling the withdrawal symptoms until you break free of her spell, like, completely. I'm curious how that really breaks down. I mean, for him to be stuck on her for like 6 months, even though it's not like a real relationship, it's more of a love spell. So I think the drug comparison is very apt in this regard, but I love that she ends up using it on everyone, and the family's so hot. They went from being, oh, this sucks, to, oh my God, congratulations, you're the daughter, you're the person I always wish, Doug would have gotten with, and the mom being like, oh, don't get all sentimental. Oh, if you start, I'm gonna start. And it's like, wow. So that ends up playing out the way it did. And I love all the while Cliff is waiting outside, and then that kid shows back up with a robot suit on, starts doing a robot and stuff like that. And I love Cliff's like, I've watched Flashdance like 80 times, and I'm, and he's like, well, show me what you got. And they start doing a little dance off. I thought was kind of cute. I even love him being like, so I had the same dream all the time. It's like someone's welding me, and then the mask lifts up, and it's Jennifer Beals, which is interesting considering the fact that he makes the reference to the, Flashdance and everything, which Jennifer Beals was in it. But I even love the kid being, wait, what's that have to do with a rat being your hair? Even I'm like, what the hell does Flashdance, and well, Jennifer Beals in particular? I mean, what does that mean? What is the significance behind it being Jennifer Beals being the one that welded on you? So I just think that's kind of interesting. We probably won't dive any deeper in that. We'll probably just leave it at that. I hope that turns into something significant later. I know it probably won't, but it'd be funny if it did. But yeah, I love it. Even Rita got caught underneath the spell and everything like that. Obviously, like, Karen doesn't always have 100% the, like, happy disposition, because she kind of tore into Rita when Rita was telling her to kind of get her shit together and stuff like that. But it's like, oh, like, the fact of the matter is, I want to focus on my happiness. I don't want to be like you. I'm going to do everything in my life to make sure I get to a good place where I don't end up like you. You're well past your prime. It's saying some super hurtful shit, especially because, like, Rita's a very prideful woman, too. So it's like that. Those daggers had to cut deep. But it's also because, obviously, she was saying a lot of stuff that, I'm sure Rita already felt insecure about. So it's just like reaffirming what she already felt. So there's that. But I love it that she tries it on Cliff, because like, you and Jane are so close and everything. Karen's like, in fact, could you give me away at the wedding? He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? And she uses her power. She's like, what do you say now? And he's like, you have psychotic eyes. And I love that I guess because he's just a robot, because I guess maybe her power kind of, it's all about the heart it tackles, and, the only thing he has is a brain, so I guess it doesn't work the same way. So that was interesting. And he tries to just take her away, but then Hammerhead kicks in. She was about to kill Doug, too, because I guess she figured if she killed Doug, because Doug's the thing that keeps drawing Karen back out, like, because the whole point was, like, because for, her and the others, it's super hard to climb to the top, of, like, control when Karen's in the driver's seat, the way they kind of say. And it's like, the more people fall into the delusion and stuff like that, I think the stronger her grip gets. So she's got the family members, she's got Doug, she's got Rita, so it's like, I guess she wanted to kill Doug to kind of completely shatter this delusion that Karen had created. But luckily for Doug, Karen kicked back in and stopped it. And I guess that was enough to kind of shatter everything, because for her, it's like, oh no, like, I was about to hurt my true love. It's like, I'd never hurt you. And I guess it kind of broke the spell, because he kind of walked away in fear, I guess maybe it's because in that moment, Karen kind of broke, so everything else included in Love Spell kind of broke. That's how I interpret it. I also thought it was kind of interesting that we did finally see the literal underground, which is a literal underground. It looks like a train track in particular, and we see Karen kind of getting dragged off by God knows who, but we see Jane kind of in a state of just kind of like, I guess this is like a super big moment of just like everyone potentially wrestling for control. I guess it's like Karen is just that damn powerful. And that the fact is that, I'm sure every one of her personalities is trying to beat Karen back. And so she's just in that state. Maybe it just has to deal with the fact is Jane's in a situation that she's in, because even Hammerhead is like, that's how Karen came to the top. It's because Jane's in her situation. So I guess it's like, maybe there's something deeper and darker that's there that's about to unleash just because Jane's not in control and Karen's being pulled back. We'll have to see. Like, I hope the next episode really, really goes into exploring, like, the underground. Like, the entire episode will take place in a matter of, like, seconds, but it's all inside of Jane's head. I'd love something like that, because I always think stuff like that's kind of pretty dope. But we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening in that regard. Then there's the other regard of, like, oh, this all has to do with a street named Danny. And we also learn a lot about Larry's past in the same regard. Apparently, he was captured by a bureau known as the Bureau of Anomalies. They go after anything, well, like any anomaly in the world, anything that just doesn't, not anomaly, God, the Bureau of Normalcy. That's it. Sorry, they go after anomalies, which included Larry back in the day in '63. That's what he saw when they went to see the original Doom Patrol. His fears was because they made him into a weapon because of his nuclear energy. And, you know, we still didn't get the full scope of what they put him through. I guess they tortured him a lot. You know, that was their way of trying to get the spirit to come out of him, because it's like, that's who you really are. Which it does beg the question that makes you wonder on some level, is there some truth to that? I mean, it seems like Larry and the spirit are two different entities, but maybe there's some twisted truth to that, in the sense of maybe there is some part of Larry that's there. I mean, he does, well, to be fair, Larry passes out every time the spirit is taking control, so maybe there's something to that, maybe not. But either way, it's interesting. Danny is literally a living bee, and I even love, like, Morally Corrupt, which I cannot deny. I love that name, especially what it represents for Morris, in the sense of like, oh yeah, it represents him kind of abandoning what, you know, because like coming to Danny made him kind of get closer to who he was and everything. And I thought it was pretty neat of like the name kind of representing that, but also I just love the name. Just, you know, it's a very nice and spicy name, you know, so I like that. But I also love that it's like, oh, like poking fun at Vic, being like, oh, Vic doesn't know what non-binary is. Let me kind of say it in a language you would understand, like 001110, kind of doing computer coding and stuff like that. And he's like, oh, wait, I have to wait for the emoji, you know, for the middle finger. And she's like, oh, you look at you being all cheeky. I love that. Essentially being all sassy and stuff like that. I love it. It was so good. But it's interesting, and I think it's very befitting that out of, well, to be fair, any of the Doom Patrol would be welcome there. But I think out of anyone, like, you know, layers upon layers to Larry would fit in there, just because of his situation, as well as, you know, just like, you know, like, oh, his body being the way it is, plus the whole spirit situation. And also Vic can understand too, like obviously the whole aspect of not being comfortable in your own skin. But that's what that place represents. Danny's this living entity that takes on the form of a street. Like, is it just like a living street, or is it a being that took on the form of a street? Never really classify that. It just seems like it's literally just a living street. Because it's like, why is the, you know, Bureau after you? And it's like, have you ever seen a teleporting, what was the word, that sentient teleporting genderqueer street? How Danny defines, well, Danny. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Obviously, Larry and Vic, that whole conversation was interesting in the sense of like, Vic is like, I'm tired of just kind of trying to make you have a spine and trying to make you step up to be a hero. But Larry's like, yeah, I'm tired of people telling me who I am. Because Larry's, you know, that's always been, I think, you know, Larry's kind of had a bit of an identity crisis. I mean, that's the big part of the entire team. Everyone on the team has an identity crisis in their own regard. But Larry's always had other people tell him who he should be and who he is. And so that moment, that kind of musical moment, I thought was kind of nice. It's like, obviously, like Danny made Larry look like himself. It's like, don't worry, Larry, I got your back. Larry and Morally Corrupt killed it. I was like, yo, it's like, oh my god, this is so good. It's like, and then it's like, oh no, that was all in Larry's head. I was like, no, that sucks. But I guess Larry kind of made up for it later on, because we see Larry kind of singing when they end up leaving Danny. But I guess, I hope so. I hope he was able to kind of rock the house like he did in his head, because for him it's like, I don't sing. But I did like it though, like, because it's interesting, like the whole like Bureau of Normalcy. It doesn't just stop like, oh, people with powers and stuff like that. It's like anything that would be considered a freak show. Like they're kind of like, which is weird to say, it's almost like some Hitler level shit of just like, if you're not what is quote unquote normal, if you're outside the realm of normal, abnormal, whether it be like you're some kind of metahuman or some creature, or you're just a person that's different in whatever regards, you know, that you're some anomaly, which is interesting, because it's like, you know, Darren's calling, it's like, you're a man, you know, saying that to Morally Corrupt. Then Morally Corrupt ended up kicking his ass. It's like, yeah, you never hit a woman, but it's like, yo, she laid the smackdown on Darren. Because it's interesting, because that's what was driving this entire thing, because like Darren was like, oh, I want to get my partner back. We never actually found out how long Morris, you know, Morally Corrupt, was actually there. That's kind of interesting. It's also interesting too that like basically the people that live on Danny in Danny, on and in Danny, all have like their energy is what feeds it. Like by living it up and kind of partying, like Danny kind of feeds off that energy osmosis. Like, you know, it's like dirty, I guess you can, heart and soul, kind of like the red blood cells of Danny in a certain extent. And it kind of makes sense at the beginning why the place kind of looked run down, especially considering at the beginning of the episode we saw it so lively and full of life. It's like, yeah, because they've been on a run ever since. So it was, you know, because Morris was going to sacrifice himself to be like, okay, like I'm gonna go back and be like, oh yeah, Danny's taken care of, and it's like I was undercover the entire time, but I took it down just so that Danny would be able to get away. They'd stop going, but like Danny was like, no more running. So, and you know, even Larry's sending a message being like, yo, like I'm already on the list. Tell them I said hi, essentially. So Captain Trainer says hi. So that's interesting. Obviously, we're not done with the Bureau, especially because, you know, Larry's got his bone to pick with them. But we'll have to wait and see whether they'll cross paths. If we'll even cross paths with Danny anymore. Maybe. I even love it because even Vic's like, so what's your story? And it's like, well, you have to ask Niles how we came to know each other, which Niles turns out to know a lot of very interesting people, including Danny, you know, so that's going to be an interesting story to find out. But obviously Vic is kind of a little less hopeful because it's like, if he doesn't find Niles, he's afraid of what things are going to turn out to be. But Danny can't really help because it's like it's got to protect the people that are inside of, you know, Danny. You know, they kind of come first. But did give him some comic book. I guess, you know, what the fact is that Mr. Nobody's some sentient being. Maybe it has something to do with that. Or it's a key to something else connected to Mr. Nobody. I have no idea. It's going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. To the next time with me, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.